Avoiding this one specific thing will most likely lead to your relationship failure. Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to discuss something that's very, very close to my heart, and this can be one of the very reasons that your relationship will fail in the end. Here are the 3 signs that you may be running in your relationship right now that it will be able for you to recognize and know that one of the things that I will reveal at the end is the exact cause of all of these patterns. So first of all, you may feel that you are starting to really abandon your emotional needs. How that can look like is that not necessarily in the big ways, but you stop saying to your spouse or a girlfriend or a fiance specific things that she may overlook, and you start slowly abandoning these small emotional needs where you see, or maybe you create almost like a voice in your head that you may really don't want to know about this. And what may end up happening is that slowly and slowly you start eroding some of your emotional or just normal needs in the relationship because you don't want to rock the boat and you don't want to upset her. Another part that's very important that can lead to, from these breadcrumbs of emotional neglect and voicing your emotional needs, what ends up happening is that slowly but surely over the weeks and months in the relationship like that, you may start eroding your own self-worth. How it looks in the day-to-day is that you stop asking for things that you care about, stop really expressing what makes you joyful or things that make you really happy because you fear that they will not be met, these needs, and the part of you you're starting to automatically yourself reject is not going to be seen, accepted, and loved. And that, unfortunately, at the end of this cycle can lead to something that can build a very, very strong resentment, because abandoning yourself in a relationship as a man will start building a lot of resentment. And first, that resentment builds within you. It starts building in your heart. It starts building in your emotions, where you are starting to self-abandon. And self-abandon on a smaller scale. Maybe it could look like in a week where you used to go 3-4 times a week to the gym. Now you go twice a week. Maybe because you had really good sleep hygiene before, now you stay over playing games or watching something on Netflix late at night, and then that really affects your sleep. And then the next day you can't really show up as the person that you normally are, really fully grounded, being able to lead the relationship. And it can show up as many, many more, but at the end, what it shows up as a deep ingrained resentment towards yourself because you're leaving your needs and emotions behind. And it's very important to realize that this will also start creating resentment towards your partner. The number one reason that all of these things are happening, and they could be happening simultaneously, where all of these parts that I mentioned now will be happening at the same time or one by one as a cycle or a process, is something that's very crucial for every relationship to thrive. And it builds connection, it builds so much more relatability, it also builds a lot of trust, and it can build levels of understanding that no other part of actions that you could take in your relationships can be built through this. And I know now for the last few minutes you're wondering, what is this thing that can bring so much connection and understanding in your relationship? And simply said, it is ability to be able as a man to lead your woman into intentional, clear conflicts and have them resolve in a positive way where both of you meet each other with understanding and you create more connection. One of the first things that we need to look at when it comes to learning about conflicts, but also starting to embodying this leader who is able to lead a woman into any type of conflict, is to know that there is 3 types of conflicts that we could have in our relationship. The first type of conflict is a kind of surface level conflict where it comes to like a very small things like, oh yeah, you left your phone or water here. We agreed that we will keep this area clean. And this doesn't need a lot of conflict resolution, rather than just you being able to say to your spouse or a girlfriend, listen, we agreed that we're going to keep this area clean. Are we able to do that further, or this is something that we need to discuss more? And usually, most of the time, if we say it in an understanding way, it's very quickly resolved, or you can even throw a little bit of fun into it, and then it's resolved. So that's kind of surface level conflict. The second type of conflict we could have in relationships is emotionally triggered conflict. And these type of conflicts with our spouses are the ones that a lot of men are really afraid to have. Why? Because we as men are not necessarily, and me included in the past, I wasn't able and capable of really holding enough space for a woman in my life to be able to be grounded enough to hold capacity of her emotions and then be able to clearly understand her and respond. Because not having that capacity, I would lead with just being able to react, and that's not enough, and it creates even more conflict. So this type of conflicts that you would have with your spouse, the emotional ones, need a very specific approach, which number one is to be able to be very grounded, to have that conflict, and that's on us. And secondly, to be able to listen and relate to the woman's needs, but specifically to her emotions and feelings that have been created either by us or created externally, and then she brings to the table, to the conflict, or vice versa, where we have emotions that we want to bring to the table, and we need to be able to hold the space for ourselves and also for the woman. And the most important part in these type of emotional conflicts is to be able to validate those emotions and feelings. And the third type of conflict is a conflict that's based on the fundamental values of the person. And I'm not saying this in a way like black and white, someone is good or evil, but I'm talking about conflict where it comes to, for example, you realizing that after a few months of being together, where initially you had a conversation with your girlfriend, she is focused on wanting to start a family, and you're at the same, but then her actions, for example, show you that she is more leaning right now towards her career, and she is in no space to actually think about starting family. And this is a conflict that's based on real specific values that she brings to the relationship. And these values don't change a lot, especially they don't change fast, but they can change. And it's important, first of all, in the beginning of a relationship to be able to know all these base values, because I believe this is the first layer of alignment with a woman. And this is something that I touch on my masterclass that you can watch in other videos. But what it is that when you come to that type of conflict, it is most important to look at that conflict from a point of view of understanding first. There will be emotions that are connected, but this is not an emotional trigger conflict. This is a value-based conflict, and that's much more important to have understanding where each other person stands. So for you to be not afraid to lead these conflicts, you need to understand how to set the stage to have these conflicts in a way that it's not calling her into being either dismissive or being defensive. So the way to frame a conflict is to start with umbrella of understanding that you want to create a situation where everyone wins. So you could say something like, I would like to speak to you about a situation or something that came to my attention, and it's something that I've been thinking or reflecting for a couple of days, and I believe it will be very beneficial for our connection and understanding that we both get into this conversation so we can really relate better. And I want you to know that I'm not saying this to create more disconnection between us, rather than I want to create more connection and understanding. And just by framing that this way, or you could add something in the lines of, I really want to know that we both leave this conversation as winners, where we can learn something about each other, and then that will help us to navigate the rest of, or the next weeks and days of our relationship even better. So that's number one. That's pre-framing the conflict and being able to show to the other person that you're not calling in from a place of trying to blame someone, trying to make them feel that they're a bad person. The opposite, that you are coming to this conflict from a place of wanting to understand and connect more. What I've heard from so many men is that the reason they're so afraid to go into conflict with their spouse is that they don't know how to emotionally regulate themselves in conflict so they don't explode and they don't cause even more damage that already has been done. So to do that and be able to emotionally regulate yourself, watch the next video.